Good afternoon, everyone. Anthony Tharp. It's been a couple of days since I last got online. I was a little busy with the grandkids, traveling across the state, all of that kind of stuff, but it was all good. But I'm here today just to make a short commentary and just to let you know I'm still working on coming up with strategy to solve some of our problems and hopefully solve my own and my partners. And the way I've been viewing things is that I'm not in this alone. Every Jamaican person that is likely to be hurt or damaged by what's happening to us is right here with us. So today's is Tuesday, March 14th, 2023, and it's 3:54 p.m. I'm gonna make this as short as possible. I just wanted to comment on the financial situation that's unfolding in the U.S. with the collapse of some banks, and you can see. I don't know if you've been paying attention, but if you've been paying attention, you could see the panic that's on the faces of these the depositors with those banks and or people doing business with those banks, and with good reason, because there were people who couldn't be paid, there were people with payrolls that couldn't be met. So there's a lot of serious issues, economic issues and fallout that happen when a bank collapses. And I'm raising this and pointing that out to you, and hopefully you're paying attention, that these banks pretty much kept everything quiet until a few hours before their announcement was made. Or alternatively, the board of directors and managers knew what was well, they must have known what was happening, but didn't tell the general public, and therefore their clients and customers, people they do business with, everybody was surprised, including the federal government. And since they collapsed in California, in Silicon Valley Bank, somewhere around there, and there has been one that the feds moved in New York as well. And I'm pretty sure there are other banks out there with issues that might be coming to bump, and in terms of their operations coming under scrutiny. Again, I raised this because a couple weeks ago in a couple of videos I mentioned and went into detail about what could happen with the ruling of Justice Tai and the Jamaican banks. And I pretty much directed or encouraged as many of you as possible to make provision to ensure that all your money wasn't in some bank sitting, because if one thing or the other, if Justice Tai rules, the appeals court upholds Justice Tai's ruling, means a lot of banks are going to have major issues, and which means you don't want to be caught with your pants down. So I'd recommend again that you don't leave all your money in the bank, and get out some, put it someplace safer. Find an established international bank if you're in the US and you have money in the Caribbean, in Jamaica for example. And I know Jamaica is problematic because not many people know that Jamaica has a debt, the largest debt in the Caribbean, to the IMF. The situations with the IMF, so a lot of the austerity measures that aren't being announced are actually being implemented in Jamaica because of the IMF policies, and hence the reason we're having all these fallouts from various groups, employment bodies, that people can't get paid, they're not getting their promised payments, whether it's back pay or whatever, or increased salaries. It's all related. So again, Jamaica is the island with the largest debt in terms of the IMF debt. And if again you are familiar with the IMF and the things that they have countries do, it could be serious for Jamaica, especially with the fallout that we haven't recovered from the COVID incidents or COVID experience. There were announcements, and they keep making announcements about Jamaica's growth potential and the amount of investments that are coming into Jamaica, but those are just talks. We haven't seen anything concrete and if there is, then they've been keeping it quiet. So we haven't seen anything concrete regarding investments in Jamaica that will, make sure that the island's economy is pretty stable. And the other side, flip side to that, is here I am with investments totaling trillions of dollars, and a group of corrupt people in the Supreme Court, and attorneys John Graham, Alexis Robinson, and a couple others are holding back those investments from being unfolded in Jamaica. And I'm talking about building major commercial, retail, mixed-use centers that will draw in international currency into the local economy, plus produce a lot of jobs, which we need. So I'm not sure why government is so silent on all of this, or the courts are still silent, even though I'm pretty sure somebody has forwarded them these videos. And in fact, I sent videos to the appeals court last week when I inquired about what was happening to the decision they should have delivered almost a year, if not 2 years ago, regarding that 300-acre development that we have scheduled for Clarendon. And we've been waiting on that. And so last week I sent a reminder email that they had promised that they were going to get back to us in terms of the judgment or the ruling. And we needed to know, because just like how the collapse of the banks could occur if Justice Tai ruling is upheld, which is primarily coming out of that Clarendon project, that 300-acre development. If coming out of that is where she made her ruling that real estate developers in Jamaica were operating illegally if they didn't have a real estate dealer's license, which was never the case. But that's what she ruled, and so her ruling is the law of the land. And if that is upheld, as I've said before, then the banking system in Jamaica could collapse. Now, you want to make sure that your money is not tied up in a collapse. In any event, take precaution is much better than sitting and waiting to let's see, because the amount of money, if you have more than $1 million in any account in Jamaica, and I'm talking Jamaican currency now, because if you have over $10,000 in any Jamaican bank, then you pretty much are way past the threshold of what government is willing to pay back in terms of if the bank collapses and they need to pay that insurance. I think the amount they're paying out now is $1 million, $1.2 million. Again, please check. I'm not 100% sure. I'm familiar with it. Used to be 600 and something thousand, but over the last couple of weeks, if not months, I've heard 1.2 floating around. However, I'm encouraging you to again protect your interest. Don't be negligent or procrastinate, because that procrastination could cost you a lot of money. So pull as much out, leave the minimal in there that the insurance will cover you, and then put the money elsewhere. There are other institutions that are pretty sturdy that you could put your money in, and I'm not talking about locally, because again, once there's a major fallout based on Justice Tai's ruling, then every bank in Jamaica is going to be affected. The whole mortgage industry in Jamaica is going to be affected and will collapse. The benefit to that and to the people of Jamaica is that those persons who have bought property from developers who didn't have a real estate dealer's license, if indeed the appeals court does not rule favorably for us, then it means you probably won't have to pay for that building or the house you bought. I put a detailed video online about the various possibilities, and therefore I would encourage you to go there and take a look and ensure that you protect your interests. Money is too hard to come by. I'm not sure your age. I'm pretty sure a lot of people who have retired are approaching that retirement age and are over 45 going into their 50s. That's when you want to protect all you have. because you don't know what could happen. That's when we start getting ill. That's when we start getting fired, or we're forced to be retired by some company that doesn't want our services or want to pay long-term pension. So it means you have to make sure you protect every dime you have. Why am I stressing this? Again, I don't want to see people get to a point where they don't know where the next meal is coming from, or they don't know how to cover their mortgages. Because believe it or not, a vast majority of people who are now working and approaching retirement still have a mortgage on their property. And unfortunately, a lot of them went and refinanced their property for equity lines of credit, and those equity lines of credit extended the mortgage that you gave to the bank. And that means that even if you're near retirement, if anything should go wrong, then you have to worry about that mortgage. It therefore means you have to worry about a roof over your head. And I'm pretty sure it's not the nicest of thought to know that when you're approaching retirement or in your 40s and you've been working for a while, all of a sudden they pull that rug from under you. There's no reserve money in the banks because you lost it because of this complicity, the complicity of the managers of the bank or whatever policies they're engaging in. However, you're the victim, and when they make bad decisions, you suffer. So please ensure that you're not in a position where if anything happens, you can't even meet your mortgage payments. And in fact, if you're 45 going into 50, you should start working towards eliminating those mortgage payments. And one of the easiest ways to do that without putting a lot of pressure on yourself is to make sure that instead of just paying the monthly payments and the interest monthly, what you do, pay a percentage or some money towards your principal. That's the amount you borrowed. Because the interest you're paying now, typically very, 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 very little goes towards the principal, which means you're paying compound interest, you're paying more interest than the money you borrowed. And then what's going to happen is that if you're not paying down that principal, means you're going to be stuck with a mortgage for the life of the loan until it's paid off. If you pay down the principal on a monthly basis, it means you're also reducing your monthly payments, because it's payment. You pay your monthly payment on your note based on the principal. So if you're reducing that principal then monthly, then it means your payment is also going to be reduced. You don't want to just make the payment. You want to tell the bank that any extra money that you pay into your account must go to your principal, and keep checking, make sure they have it on the record, and keep checking, because that's how they make their money. And it means if you are not alert or vigilant, they're going to quickly forget the instructions they got and put all your money towards the interest, and that's going to complicate your financial standing in the long and the short run. Now, the money you save off that mortgage, believe it or not, goes towards your retirement or towards an investment fund. In any event, you can cut your mortgage payment over that life of the loan to a fraction of what it should be. So look at what's owed on your mortgage, pay down the principal, then start difference that you save, start saving that money so that it doesn't end up with a bank but it comes back to you. Because the reality is, if you pay off that mortgage, whatever money you would have been paying to the bank over the balance of the loan period is going to be a lot of money in your pocket when you check what you've been able to save. So you don't want to keep just paying the principal, just pay the monthly payments that it gave you. And if for any reason you have an adjustable rate mortgage, and the adjustable rate mortgage is one that whenever interest rates shift, then your payments are likely going to shift. So when the feds increased interest rates the other day, and people had gotten loans at 3% and 2.5% and even less in some cases if you had excellent credit, and it's now pretty more in the 6-7%, 8% range, you'd have seen that your monthly payments went up significantly. Because if you're paying 3% or 3.5%, and you're going up to 7, your payment amount would have been doubled. And that means it's more money coming out of your pocket, less money towards retirement, less money towards investment, less money towards your vacation, your travel, your leisure. And you want to make sure that your work, when you work, you benefit from the work you put out and the earnings you get. Makes no sense for them to say, oh, you're a good employee, you're getting all these accolades and having your picture posted on a wall, and at the end of the day the money you're earning is just going back into the system, the financial system, and stays with them. So you want to make sure that you ensure that the money you have in the bank, in one bank at least, is not money that's significantly more than they pay you in insurance if that bank should collapse. B, you want to make sure you're trying to pay down that mortgage, the principal on the mortgage, so that you save money. And again, remember to tell the bank, your financial institution, to ensure that that money, that extra money you pay monthly, goes towards your principal. And keep checking, because they're dishonest. Banks are just straight out dishonest. They come up with all kind of policies to find ways to rip you off, in short, and they do it legally. And by the time you try to fight it, it's too late. They're going to say, well, you should have told us. So don't fall into the trap of just making payments. And in terms of the money you're saving, you look towards less risky investments. I would not, and I don't give people financial advice, but I'm saying to you, if I were in a position of nearing retirement, I would certainly not look to be putting my money on risky investments. So again, measure what you invest, how you invest it, where you invest it, and if you could diversify. Again, don't just look at investing. If you live in the US, look at other parts of the world to invest. Earn other international currency in other markets, and keep a variety, a diversified portfolio of accounts of different international currency that will maintain their value if anything does happen with the collapse of an economy. And if you are loaded and you have a lot of money that you've been saving, find banks that are stable traditionally and make sure you put an account there. With international travel and technology, you can do banking, stay in the US, do banking in Switzerland or those places, Luxembourg, all those places. Find out stable countries where they have stable banking, policies and organizations, and keep money there as well, so that you're using the globe as your marketplace to manage your assets. Again, we love Jamaica. The reality is, don't sacrifice yourself or take gamble by just letting all your assets and your investments stay in Jamaica or are made in Jamaica. Find other islands as well, and shop around, because they have quite a few islands that I didn't know their debt ratio in terms of what they owe to the IMF is so significant. Some of these small islands are in trouble as we speak, and so shop and see which ones owe more to the IMF or other loaner agencies, and what their gross national product is, and how long will they take to pay off this. Will they be able to pay it off? And if they can't, then you look to more stable countries. The effect of not taking the precaution is that you are likely to increase your risk of losing. And I'm pretty sure if you follow international news, you'll see how many people in 2008 that lost everything, had pulled money out of their homes and put it in investments, and those investments crashed in 2008 and they lost everything. Some people who were retired had to go back to work. Don't put yourself into those positions. And know a lot of persons, because I had my ear to the wind, and a lot of people were talking about putting their money in crypto, and a lot of people did. And those people who put it in there just like a pyramid scheme, those people who went in early made some money. If they stayed in, then they lost it. So be careful where you put your money and how you gamble away your future. I have never believed in any currency that doesn't have anything backing it. The US currency is strong because the US has a strong economy, and a federal government that backs up their dollar. So and plus the resources, the assets, the size of the country, just the mere existence and power of the US and the corporations around the planet, it's a strong economy and will continue to be a strong economy unless, of course, some unfortunate occurrence between, where we had wars or stuff like that happening. And that goes back to, again, never be 100% sure that disaster can't strike anywhere. You want to make sure you have a stash someplace with real cash, with, whether you have it in other international currency, US currency, but you legally can save your money in a private location that you own and control. So think of that. The old way that a lot of affluent people use are just buying a safe and putting it in a secure place and put away some stuff in your safe at home. It's legal, nothing is wrong with it, and if anything goes down, then you have quick access to liquidity. And it's not only if the economy crashes. If you have an emergency and you have to move, then you have liquidity at home in your safety deposit box at your place. Because you can't, in a safety deposit box in the bank legally here, it's illegal to put money in there, believe it or not. People do it, but it's illegal to have it in there. So if for any reason the feds should happen to go into the bank and have to go into your safety deposit box and they find money in there, then they can seize that money, because it's illegal to do that unless they've changed the law. Check again every time I say something, and because they constantly change policy. But I know in a safety deposit box in a bank, for example, you could put your jewelry, you could put your documents, you could put, I'm not even sure if you could put gold in there or stuff. Maybe you could, but check, because again, not having all your money in a bank account is your safest bet. So if you're scared of putting it at home, then, and you could legally put it in your safety deposit box, then put some there again, for the simple reason that you want to diversify the locations you have your assets and your liquidity. And you want to make sure you have somebody you could trust, that you can say where it is, that they probably won't need access to it unless you have an emergency. So be able to send a person you could trust to that location if you need to. However, don't share that information obviously with any and everybody. You can't trust anybody. As you can see from what's happening in Jamaica, we put our trust in people and they rip us off. And whether it's your relative or a friend, there is no limit to where some people will go in terms of hurting other people. It's a tough little assignment, but you need to look seriously at protecting your hard-earned cash. And in a bank, it's not necessarily the safest place. The banks that collapse here is just a reminder that these things happen. It happened a lot in 2008, and you've seen it happen in Europe all the time, where the dollar loses a lot of value, or the local currency loses a lot of value, and people can't get US to purchase or other international currency. There are ways to protect yourself. Read up, research financial advisors giving encouraging on ways to protect that asset, but be very careful of your financial advisors as well, because they make money by telling you how to invest your money, and they don't lose money when you invest wrongly, or they tell you to invest wrongly. And sometimes they never know, sometimes they don't know, but some, as you've seen from films like The Wolves of Wall Street and all them kind of money films or movies, they don't really care. The average person that works those areas don't really care. Their thing is to sell you an investment, and in their head They have convinced themselves, in keeping with the law, that you made an investment, and if you lose, then it's on you. There's nothing illegal with a financial advisor or investment broker telling you to put your money over there, or you direct him to invest your money as you see fit, and if it's lost, it's on you. That's why the first thing the president of the US came out and stated was that feds won't cover or pay out or cover persons who have lost money in these banks. That's the risk you take as an investor. And that's just to remind us of what happened to Mr. Bolt. I see remnants of the story still lingering in the press, and the reality is that it was an investment, and unfortunately the investment house ripped him off. I still don't see him getting back, if any, all of his money. So you don't want to be in Mr. Bolt's position, or be in a position where you have no reprieve, you have no way of protecting yourself. So minimize that risk. Find places you could have your money in multiple locations. If the insurance amount that they have in these banks is $1.2 million, make sure you don't float a whole lot of money in that account. Find international banks that you could trust and put some money in those areas as well. When you're going on vacation, find offshore banking locations that are legal, and they're legal, and have accounts there that you could keep your money there. Don't make just the rich and so benefit from those institutions and you can't, and then you end up losing because you're fearful that you're doing something wrong. It is not illegal for you to have offshore accounts, and unless they change that law, and I doubt they'll ever change it in the US, because that destroys people's freedom of choice, and it would certainly terminate or damage the banking sector or financial sector significantly, because a lot of corporate giants have their money stashed abroad, and the government is supported by those people. And so you want to take advantage of all of those things. Don't think because you're not a billionaire or a millionaire times over you can't protect your money. So instead of just going on a cruise, go on a cruise or take a trip to an area where you could set up international accounts and have access to it. Access is important. For those of us who have not taken a look at the videos I did on the imminent collapse of the banking sector in Jamaica and the Justice Ties ruling, please do so that you are aware of what's going on in terms of mortgages, in terms of the imminent collapse. Because my whole thing is that the appeals court is taking so long to make its ruling. I get worried whenever a court takes that long to make a ruling on what are fundamental, simple issues. Is either the party that was sued on that project broke the contract, or breach a contract, and the court rules on that. It's either the developers, real estate developers, are legally able to do developments and sell their development without having a real estate dealer's license. It's as simple as that. I don't see why it's taking this long and why the decisions are coming, because the agreements we had in place fundamentally dictates how the settlements will occur if there's a breach of contract. So there are just two primary issues that the court must decide. Is it legal for developers to have sold property to individuals without having a real estate dealer's license? Simple. If it is, then obviously the next ruling is that this party that we went into a joint venture development plan with violated the contract and therefore should suffer the consequences of breach of contract. And I say it's defined in the contract. So the judge doesn't need to do a whole lot of thinking. Everything is there. It's legal. A contract like that is legal. And the other thing now is they have to, if they rule against us, they have to tell the people and Jamaica, because it's in the public interest to tell people that the contracts they entered into with these developers were illegal contracts. And once the court makes that ruling, every other agreement that came out of those contracts are themselves illegal, including the mortgage you gave to the bank and including the promissory note that you signed when the bank lent the money to pay off these developers. So I want to thank you again for taking the time to listen. My objective, as you can see, is not to just talk about the problems, but try and come up with solutions. And I want to thank the persons who have been coming to the site and making comments. They're valuable. I think about them, I respond to them. I might be quickly responding because, as I said, a lot of the times time management is an issue, but I'll get back. However, but the comments you've been making are excellent, and my encouragement again is that we find a way to build our own tiny little groups and network on solving the problem. It's not going to take the politicians to fix the problems in Jamaica. It's going to take conscious Jamaicans who come up with strategy and employ those strategies to build the economy. And once we build the economy from a personal perspective, then the island will become strong. We need to find ways, as I've suggested in past videos, to screen these persons who are coming, but they want to be politicians and their policies, and ensure that they'll be true to their word before we start again just voting for the same two parties that's been there. You can't trust people who haven't been able to perform, and it makes no sense to keep continuing this mission or this journey with a group of people who have failed. You don't keep going to an institution that doesn't produce graduate students. That's just fundamental common sense. And if we have a parliament and politicians who have failed us and are failing us, then we need to find ways to replace those persons. It's going to take conscious effort. In terms of those of us who are Jamaican and we're looking at our island and what's going on, think international. You can only help Jamaica if you think international. If you think local and stick to local policies, local programs, all of that, you're going to fail just like Jamaica. So think international before you start focusing on just the problems. Come up with solutions. I want to thank you. Please subscribe and share the video. I still have my assignments to complete. I promise you I'm going to come up with programs and strategies that I'll share with you. I'm working on them, and I'm also waiting on the courts on the matters. I told you that, sitting with them, and once we get word what's going to be happening there, I'll share them with you. However, I know, as I've said, we're waiting on this ruling from the appeals court on the 300-acre development, and the ruling that Justice Tai, we believe, erroneously made. I don't know how she came up with it, but it's for the appeals court to remedy that situation. We have other matters that's coming up that I've been dealing with over the last couple of weeks, hence the reason you haven't heard from me as well. And in one instance, we're going to mediation, and I must stick a pin here. In this particular matter, it was a project just on the outskirts of Mandeville, a 22-unit townhouse, upscale, gated, and the joint venture partners decided they were going to knock heads with some persons who tried to defraud us, and in so doing they defrauded themselves. In any case, we were successful, and we met to go over damage assessment. And so I asked the court, I said, it's been a while, it's been over 10 years since we've been waiting on the court, but now we are here. These persons, do they have the money to compensate us for the damage done? Because if they don't, then the only thing the court can do is to rule that we can move forward on development, so we can make back what money we've lost or spent with them. The judge, with my question, the judge then asked the what we call the debtors, the people who owe us money now because of the damages, the judgment debtors. We are the judgment creditors. The judge decided to ask them if they wanted to mediate the situation. Now, my thing is, didn't want to bother with it, but since she said she'd get them to try to mediate so we could have a discussion around what they need to do, because the judge told them they owe us, and hopefully we can come to terms. So the only terms I see we coming to is them deciding to remove what caveats they had put on, removing the illegal fraudulent mortgage they had put on the property as well, and allow us to go forward with the project. That said, I'm just expressing that because I want you to also realize that a lot of the times when people get involved with investments, especially the type that we do, they go listen to other people. I don't know if they're just the typical Jamaican bad mind, and they think because we're going to make money out of the project, then they're going to sabotage us. And so in the short, they hurt themselves. Don't fall into the trap of attorneys who just take your matters to court knowing you can't win, because that makes it ridiculous, because you're going to owe the other party and you're going to owe those attorneys. That's another matter for another day. I want to thank you for listening, and stay healthy. It's pretty cool today, thank God for that. Yesterday was hot. And again, Florida, I thank God for the state of Florida. This governor is something else though, but that said, Florida is still one of the best states to live. And unfortunately, the topography of Florida is pretty flat, and we don't see the mountains we have in Jamaica, and the landscape is so much more relaxing. However, because of the atmosphere of Jamaica, Florida is ideal right now. So I'm encouraging as many people as they can to get out of Jamaica to see the rest of the world, live international. You can always go back, you can always support the country. Don't think staying in Jamaica is patriotic. In fact, if you travel and you see what's happening in the world, learn, gather additional experiences, and get exposed to other things, and you do look back at the Jamaica to do something, then you'll be a much better investor in that country. So again, thank you, have a great evening, and look forward to talking to you in the near future. Bye.